Hello and welcome to my 100 hours of playtime Factorio Seablock base tour. I recently crossed the 100-hour threshold in this save file, so I figured what better time to do a small tour. So I'm gonna take you through all the sections that I've built, how they got to exist, what their role is in the overall factory, and what you want to keep an eye on when doing this yourself. So we'll start in the older part of the base. So this is old power, slag, um, geodes. Then we'll move to a part which is partly old, partly new, which contains animals, fish, buffers. We'll look at oil and gas. Solar panels will pass on the way, but it's not really interesting. It's just solar panels. Oil and gas processing, and then up here we have just ore processing. So this is actually a big bus. So we'll take a look at that. The output of that feeds into smelting, so that's where we'll go next, and then we'll all look at what this resulted in the main bus. You can already see from the map that I switched up the architecture a little bit. Like at this point, this looks a lot different from the first part, and we'll see why when we get to that point. But first, we'll look at old power. Okay, so here we are at the heart of the base. This mud washing setup is actually one of the oldest parts and probably one that got touched the least. One of its roles is producing mud for soil, which goes into tree arboretra. The trees get sawed into wood. Previously, the main source of power here would be turning the wood into cellulose fiber, then into these little wood chips, which go into blocks, which go into charcoal, which go into charcoal pellets, which would then be burned up. So we'll see in a bit where the rest of this wood comes from. So actually the wood that's being produced here is mostly going towards resin now, but previously this used to be the main loop. Then before we move down, what we have here is a little bit of a power setup, an accumulator being charged, and a power switch. The power switch connects whenever this drops below a certain threshold. So I think it's about, let's see, when it drops below 20%, then it will allow the power to flow, and it will mean that these steam engines will actually help the solar panels produce power. So that's what I did after I built a bunch of solar panels. We actually replaced the steam engine, or we left these steam engines in place, but we added a small setup to make sure that they're only used as a backup system. Now, when we go down here, this is something I probably should have built earlier than I did. This is Tyanaton farming, and we're getting a bunch of these wood chips from this. So this is a good way to scale your power usage if you're using burner power, but you haven't quite gotten enough arboretra going to feed your needs. Luckily, Tyanaton can also be used to make methanol, so that's the other array here. So yeah, that's power. Okay, next up, the animals. The fish are the oldest part of this base. It's mostly used to get polluted artificial fish water, which goes into these alien bacteria. That's the original reason we built it. But there's also a line with raw fish oil going into some processing over here in order to get some more plastics. So that's a nice way. At some point we had overflow fish water, so we put that into this guy to get some crystallized chunks. getting this right is kind of tricky at the moment. We want to get more fish because we'll need meat later. But if you want to have this balanced, then it's important to set these two to another recipe, which is the fish petting, which balances out the amount of fish that you have. So that's important to keep an eye on. Then down here we have some puffers. This is a fairly new addition. And we're just gonna make some puffer eggs over here, which are used to make small biter eggs. But they could be used for other stuff, I think, but I haven't really gotten to that. So I have a feeling I was a little bit slow on the uptake for the puffers, but I think you can use them for all kinds of gas production and such. So some stuff where I'm a little bit low on, that's probably could be mitigated by using more puffers. Yeah, here this is not quite interesting. This is just a little bit of plastic line. Up here we have some more of the natural stuff. So the alien goo is used up here to make fertilizer, and we have the alien bacteria being used, and this all results in a loop for these alien plant life samples. So this is it profits very little. Like, this is a really slow loop. I built it fairly early on and I'm really happy with that. Recently we used up a bunch of the samples to do research, but building this early really rewards you because it's just otherwise it's just gonna be real slow to get all of it. Next up, some oil and natural gas production. This is currently all from blue algae, which we have a limited amount of in the sense that we're using sulfuric acid and carbon dioxide to make it. This is being processed in natural gases. We were burning oil for the longest time, but that's really not that efficient. What you want to be doing is processing it into these liquids and then burn those if you have overflow. So burning the oils for overflow is real nice. You'll get some steam out of it. We reuse that steam in some of these recipes, which have the higher priority. Some electricity production, which we are not setting as backup explicitly because we want the steam to be consumed if we need to. But what can always be done is use it for cooling, so we get more purified water for this cooling process. So if we really have too much steam, that's where we feed it. A little bit of lubricant over here, not really important, but it does the job. Yeah, so, and here we have a little bit that flows into plastic, but in fact, like the methanol, so this when this overflows, then we trigger it, but actually a lot of the liquid plastic is coming over from the other end, from the natural part. Okay, so here we are at our new ore processing facility. This used to be squeezed all into basically this area, which I've now replaced with some yellow science ingredients, but yeah, for now, basically at some point I realized it didn't scale and I had to build it out. We also changed over the recipes, so there's recipes which make multiple ores and there's recipes which make specific ores, and I switched everything over to make the specific ore. I probably would have done that earlier if I knew how well it worked. I think it would have been a big deal to make it happen. The disadvantage of this is that you need all of the different types of sort of primary ores. Before I think I only had 4 of them, and that was enough to cover all types, but the problem with that was that we got huge backlogs of ores that we used a little bit less than others. So here we have, for each of the primary types, we have crystallizers and then crushers, which we bring onto a bus. You see the return ores, so this is the to, and this is the from. So here we have the usable ores for smelting, and this is the ones that needs to be sorted and combined. So here we create catalysts, combine them into iron, copper, lead and tin, and then we get to the next level. So here we have some flotation cells. We save up the overflow on geodes in this warehouse, so we're not crushing those anywhere. We have some for each of them. Notice that these give us sulfuric wastewater, so we process that here. How are we doing on that? Yeah, looks good. Then we have some other types. So these produce fluoric wastewater. These rubite chunks produce nitric wastewater, and then the crotonium produces chloric wastewater, which gets us a lot of salt. So once we have all the chunks, then we move on to creating some new ores with these crystal catalysts, silicon, this is nickel, aluminum, and zinc. There's some space left here because we can also crystallize fluoride ore, but we're already getting a bunch from the wastewater, so I don't quite know how that should work out. Next up we have crystals. So this is quite simple. It uses some of the acids that can be created using the wastewater products from the chunks, so that seems to be quite balanced quite well. You need to keep an eye on that you have enough or that it doesn't overflow, but in general it works out quite nicely. For example, this nitric acid looks kind of empty, but it doesn't seem to be a problem here, so probably when we eat more chunks we'll get more nitric acid, then we'll be fine. Then we have sapphire crystals, all the different kinds. And then with hybrid catalyst we make gold, we make aluminum, we make cobalt, silver, reserve some space. And then we have these purified crystals, I think. Purified ores, basically. Reserved some space, and then we make tungsten out of that. And that's the end of this base. And we have a nice swamp tree over here. Sorry, the end of this bus, not the base, rather. So that's basically the advantage of doing it this way, is that we specifically create each type of ore. So it backlogs like on these belts. It stops if it's no longer needed. And that's a real nice way to sort of regulate the amount of each ore that you make. The disadvantage is that we use a whole lot of belt to get this. If we need to improve throughput on this, that's also gonna be an issue. Those are the main disadvantages, but I like this setup. I probably would have switched over to the specific crafting recipes earlier if I realized it was so useful. In the end, I think we're kind of in the right direction. Here you already see this used to be half and half, but we had to make a full belt for each of iron and copper. So next time I would also do that immediately. So this is ore production. Let's go to smelting. So the smelting area, this is also an area which has been organically growing a little bit over time. So initially there used to be smelting here, but once the recipes got more advanced, what I did, I moved some of the ores out towards the left, and I did some other stuff in here. So in this case, the uncoiling for the iron and copper is done here, but there used to be smelting here basically. Steel, some carbon production for sulfur on the line. So this is a line of half carbon, half charcoal. So in general, what will happen is that the charcoal will get used as fuel and the carbon is needed in some ingredients. But if it accidentally uses carbon as fuel, it doesn't really matter. It's just as efficient. So yeah, basically doing a double line like this is very useful if we just need fuel for some things, and for the recipes they'll pick the right one automatically. What you'll see is for some recipes we are using the more advanced tactics, for some we are not, and we probably should be. We're emptying out some of these though. For example, zinc and cobalt are really slow, so like it's backlogged, but it's not, yeah, it's not really like it's gonna be a while before this empties out. Though we do see, I think, the nickel, is that yeah, so the nickel, I think, oh no, it looks a lot like the zinc, right? Or no, okay, so the nickel is still in there, but it's actually the zinc that seems to have, yeah, the zinc is all used up, so I guess that was useful for some stuff. Or it's just a little bit of time. No, it should be in there still. Okay, anyways, next up, iron, 2 steps pre-processing. So this is where the more advanced stuff gets in. We need some limestone for that. Or lime, I always forget which is which. This is limestone. Copper, same thing, so more advanced recipes, more steps, but we all made it work. So what you'll see here is we'll have a column for each. I spaced it out a little bit more as we got more landfill. We have the ability to scale up some of these when we need to, but for now, like, this is okay. We're mixing solder here as well. And at the last part we have some tungsten processing, so this is actually pretty full, so that's good. Yeah, so that's smelting. And the final part of the main tour, the main bus. This is where this is also one of the older parts, but you'll notice that we snuck some stuff through, so that's why there's a lot of stuff like underground and messy up here. Red science. So basically the philosophy I had there is we'll build like a normal bus, make sure everything is extendable. In practice, this didn't really matter as much. So I don't know if I would specifically do this again. It is very clean and very easy to see what's what, but it took quite a lot of materials initially. So I might do a little bit more of a setup where we do some direct insertion and just have like one machine doing stuff. That might be very much worthwhile. But in the end, like, for scale, this actually works out quite well. We can get our resources where we need to. I started making solar panels quite early, I think, relatively. I'm still happy with that. It's a good way to get persistent power production, and it's just yeah, it's very it's not that scalable, but it is really efficient in a mind share kind of way, right? So nuclear power is really good, but you need to set it up properly, whereas power panels you just plump down and you have power, which is really nice. So yeah, that's good. We have some so this is a funny one. This is an ingredient that got added to blue science after we built it initially, because I upgraded. So this is a blue science ingredient which uses some of the stuff that goes into green science, and we just bust it all the way up to the blue science production. Some other stuff we added later for the what is it, insulated wire stuff. What you noticed is that here we did a little bit more of a stricter bus paradigm. So what I did is always 2 belts, then 2 empty, because then you can chain through it using the normal basic underground belt. And we only built on one side of the belt. And the reason I did it is because initially this belt went about up to the steel, right? So this is actually, yeah, probably it went about up to the coil over here. Turns out we have silicon here as well, but like these, like what is it, 7 lines got added in later. So I sort of doubted, like, do I want to preserve space or not? In the end, I did a little bit, but not quite all of it. But it is useful. And only building on one side of the belt works out quite well from a sort of design standpoint, right? But it's really space inefficient. I don't know if I would do it again, given that I'm about to sort of move some stuff to robot production. But it worked out quite nicely. Like, we could just scale up pretty much infinitely until we ran into the behemoth worms. So that was a disadvantage. If I would play Seablock again, I would probably actually disable the biters, even though like it was a fun challenge to research the military. But it's, yeah, this build really does have a cost. It's not all fun and games. Here we get to our blue science production stuff. You see that the other ingredients get fed in from below. And this is also our labs area. We have some purple science coming in from up top. And we have some of those natural science packs being flown in by robots. Some nice roboport production. And then here there's production for blue chips. So blue chips we needed for machines, basically. So this is quite a complicated process. And some of these, like, actually I copy pasted from the red circuit production. So you could probably do some stuff here that's okay. That's not random titanium plates lying somewhere. But you could do this maybe more efficiently, and with some more direct insertion. But I do like it was really easy to just copy that and work it in. Next up, we have some of the production for purple science. So we do reprocess the copper. This is actually backlogging quite nicely, looks like. Let's see, yeah, you're still working, but yeah, basically, yeah, it's almost backlogged. There's still some red circuits needed. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we could reprocess here as well, which is gonna be nice. But we'll need some roboport coverage to ferry it over. Yeah, this is basically the last part of this bus probably. I'm not really looking forward to extending this. I think I'm just gonna do much more with the robots. My idea is that I'll probably have like a fluid bus with pipes, and then ferry over all physical materials using robots, because fluids and gases are really inefficient with the robots. But maybe in the end I'll even do that. Like, with unbarreling you can do a lot still. So yeah, this is the end of the base tour. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, suggestions as well. If you wanna look at how this base got to be, check out my Seablock playlist. It has everything from start to finish. And if you wanna just see how this continues, new episodes are out every day. So go check those out. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks! If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps people like you find it too. Thanks!